Just a second.
Well,
we should, and there we go.
I think we're live.
Welcome. Hi, you guys. Welcome to the Saratoga podcast. Good afternoon, Adam. Good afternoon, Dan. How are you?
Doing great. Number 100. I should have ran a market 32 and gotten like one of those balloons.
I know, right? It is our official 100th episode.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. That's a lot of content, you guys. A lot of content.
A lot of top quality content. Valuable.
A lot of insights into what's going on in this great city. And boy, I think we got a lot to talk about today with the city council meeting last night and the short-term rental proposal to regulate the short-term rental industry in the city.
We really do. I say we just dive on in because so much happened at last night's city council meeting. So primarily they had a public hearing about the newest proposal for short-term rentals in Saratoga Springs. And I heard that there were like insane amounts of people there. I heard it was in the city council room, but I heard the whole hallway was packed with people. People were sitting on the floor, like waiting for almost upwards of 2 hours to comment. So people had a lot of opinions, and I know you guys got to watch basically the whole public hearing. So do you want to kind of weigh in and let people know some of the concerns?
Yes, but before we do that, Robin, to paint the picture for those that have not been to city council meetings in that room, you've been in there more than any of us. Paint what that room is like, what the limitations are of that room, and why the music hall is sometimes a more comfortable anyway venue to have those.
Absolutely. So the city council room on the first floor of City Hall has an occupancy of 49 people. And 49 people is actually really tight in there. It's a small room. And so oftentimes the meetings are moved up to the Skip Saratoga Music Hall on the third floor, which can accommodate like 150 people easily. But for whatever reason, the city council decided to keep it in the smaller room, even though they knew they were going to get a bigger crowd. I think they think the audio is better down there, but either way, I think it was kind of a stupid decision, you know?
The mayor said something about safety. I don't quite understand it with COVID concerns and everything. I don't know. I'm not going to dismiss his answer. I didn't really hear it completely, watching it on the phone, but he did give an answer why it wasn't there. I don't know. So I'm sorry, Robin, keep going.
The fact that there's a magnetometer on the first floor, so you can have people walk through a metal detector on their way into the city council room. And that doesn't necessarily work if you're sending people up to the music hall on the third floor. You'd have to have like a kind of funky flow for that to happen. So that's probably what he's referring to. But either way, I think it was, I don't think it's great for people to be sitting on the ground in the hallway, although they do have a monitor out there, but that's what they chose to do. So there you go.
Well, I feel bad for the people that were there, but anyway. Adam, you want to kick off on what you saw?
Yeah,
with the public comment of that?
Sure. They talked about Commissioner Moran proposed his vision for the short-term rental regulations. You had I would say, barring kind of the BLM public comments, I think one of the most spirited, well-attended, and meaningful public comment periods that I've ever seen. My guess, I would say it's 70 people. 70 people were against this proposal. 30% were for it. It was just to kind of in a nutshell, what I heard from the proposals, people who were for this proposal said, enough is enough. There's 3 homes in their neighborhood that have been turned into short-term rentals. They're dealing with parties. They're dealing with cars parked down the road. And they're sick of having their kind of quiet neighborhood turned into a festival and a party on weekends. The 70% who were against this saw this really overstepped. Now, one of the common themes was everybody who was against this proposal was not against regulating any sort of regulation. I think that's important to note.
Yeah.
That everybody's for some kind of regulation. but the people there's some of the things they're quoting is for a first-time offense, you could be fined $2,500. The homeowner could be held liable for the actions of the people who are renting their space. They had to open their home up for inspections, for code enforcement and fire department. And I think at the end of the day, what you found is that the people, this proposal, I think, tried to please everybody, and in the end, pleased nobody, right? Because the people who don't want these short-term rentals in their neighborhood said, "Listen, this still is going to allow these 3 homes to be in my neighborhood." And the people who were against the regulations were said, "Listen, this is just completely government overstep. This is a commissioner who and this is their words, not mine, but a commissioner who's looking for more power and wants to be able to kind of control more parts of the city." And so you had these competing factions, and at the end it was tabled.
Yeah. Wait, can I ask you a quick question? So I listened to the pre-agenda meeting on Monday, and at the pre-agenda meeting, they talked about this for like half an hour, to the point where Tony Izzo had to come up and say, traditionally these kind of discussions are saved for the city council meetings so the public can watch. So you guys might want to like wrap it up. And one of the things they kept talking about was, or kind of like mentioning but not explaining, was enforcement, and also how they would get people to register for the short-term rental, like register their short-term rental. And so I guess that was my first question. How are we getting people to register with this city, their short-term rental, just in general?
Well, Commissioner Moran said at one point was it's all going to be done online. There will be no personal show-ups to go. And then the state will share their data with us so they can sort of track what's happening, is what he said in 2 separate instances.
But say that I'm like, screw this. I'm only, renting for a week, whatever, or I don't know. And I don't feel like having the people at my house. I don't feel like paying the fees. I'm just going to do it. Screw it. Are my neighbors turning me in? Like, what's happening?
There would be a cross-reference, right? So you'd have, unless you're completely on the private market, you're going to have to advertise your space to be rented. And theoretically, they'll be able to cross-reference that with their database of applications to say, "Hey, listen, we have this home that's being rented." But that would be tricky. I mean, another thing that was being proposed again,
because
they're going to put in a hotline, a tipster, a 24/7 tipster
24-hour
call and report on your neighbor if you have a problem with their operation. And again, this is my issue with this is that I understand and have a lot of sympathy for people who say, "Listen, I don't want homes in my neighborhood being rented out." But, and this is a big but, this business and this industry is not new to Saratoga. People in Saratoga have been renting out their homes since the beginning of track, for 100 years. So I do sympathize with people who say a residential neighborhood's a residential neighborhood. I don't want people renting it. This has been kind of an underlying grandfathered in workings of Saratoga Springs. So that's that. Again, my personal feeling is I think this proposal way oversteps government power. I understand the need for safety, and that was a big thing they brought up. Of you want the code enforcement to make sure you have a fire extinguisher. Fine, have somebody sign something. In the 100 years of people renting out their homes in Saratoga, have we ever lost a tourist to a house fire? Right? And I don't want to make small that potentially tragic event. But again, you can't do this giant overstep now of just having the government control and regulate and have an application for every part of this business.
Remember when we had on Dan, you booked him, the guest from who I think worked with Granicus?
Yes.
On short-term rentals. And the most important thing I think he said to us was that the objective of like what you're trying to do and how you want your city to look in 5 years should be really clear when you're writing whatever proposal you're writing to address short-term rentals. And I think that's kind of what's missing here. Like, I think, Adam, you just articulated it perfectly. It's kind of trying to do everything for everyone and at the same time doing nothing. Yeah. And so I'm kind of like, part of me is kind of like, why don't we just focus on the safety element first? Or, why don't we just focus on, you know, the having something that's basically a commercial run property in a residential zone. Like, it just seems like we are trying to address too much, and at the same time, nothing is. It does seem like overreach. I don't know.
I am differing from both of you, at least from my gut. I did read the latest proposal. At my look, I thought it was somewhat balanced. Others may vehemently disagree. And I'm a stakeholder to the effect of, yes, I live in a neighborhood. Yes, we've had Airbnbs here, but I don't rent my place out or any other place out. So I'm a, limited stakeholder, I guess. So from my gut, I was like, this looks reasonable. And listen, I've criticized Dylan Moran a lot. And so if I'm saying that something that he is largely responsible for is reasonable, that's saying something. And last night on the comments, it seemed like the people that wanted, strict rules and so forth did not like short-term rentals. They were against a lot of this. They didn't think it went far enough. Those that were pro thought it went too far. And I said to myself, geez, maybe they found the sweet spot if both sides are against it. That's not very scientific on my part. That's all just from my gut. There's no legal analysis in what I said. But on the legal analysis part, Dylan Moran was attacked once or twice last night directly. I thought that was unfair. Again, if I'm defending Dylan Moran, that's saying something. And I didn't think it was helpful. But now Dylan seems to be hell-bent on getting this passed quickly. Prudence be damned. And he is moving. They didn't even do that tabling last night. Dylan just said, I'm going to table this. And that's not a proper table. And someone will say, well, what's the big deal? Well, then, as far as I think that proposal died last night, and they're going to have to reintroduce it at the next board meeting. A table is properly done by a motion, a second, and a majority vote. He just said, I'm going to table this, and everyone nodded their head. And, and my point in bringing that up, what seems like a minor point, is we are going to get sued here. So you got to have your ducks in a row before you get there. And there was someone said last night, like, we checked with a law firm on a phone call, and they said it looked legal to them, or they felt that's not good enough. That is because if we are going to get sued, we need to. I think the law firm has to do a point-by-point analysis and give it to the city of possible flashpoints for litigation. There's a lot of moving parts of this proposal, and give me the case law. Tell me why we're not going to get sued and the litigant is going to win against the city at a large cost on this point, on that point. Tell me that the attorney general has an opinion letter out on this issue and it sides with our proposal. It says it's legal, things like that. So I've got a lot of problems with it, but the balance to me, the fine parts need to be worked on, but the balance to me seems to be there, and that'll probably upset a lot of people, but that was my gut feeling.
Can I bring up an awkward point? So sure. And I actually agree with everything you just said, Dan. And I think that the city council is particularly sloppy when it comes to following Robert's Rules of Order. And I also think they've gotten particularly sloppy with their where'd Dan go? Oh, he's leaving. Okay. Well, hopefully he'll be back. I also think they've gotten particularly sloppy and just like they call each other by their first names. And I'm just like, come on, bring a little formality back to these conversations. But that being said, in the pre-agenda meeting, Commissioner Songvi brought up the fact that they had just bought the house next door to them. And they were buying it, I guess, for her in-laws who are going to eventually move here, but their moving got delayed. And so now the house is just sitting empty. And so now they want to rent it. They want to rent it out. They want to do short-term rentals. And Dan, can I bring you back in? Okay. So I was just saying that in yesterday's pre-agenda meeting, Commissioner Songvi said, or in Monday's rather pre-agenda meeting, Commissioner Songvi said they just bought the house next door to them and they had bought it to have their in-laws like come move there eventually, but their in-laws got delayed in moving there. So now it's sitting empty. And so now they want to rent it out. And she was asking questions about how she could rent out the house they had just purchased based on these new short-term rental regulations. And it just kind of struck me that I think that all 5 commissioners or 4 commissioners of the mayor should be disclosing whether or not they own property here that they're renting out for short-term rental, because to me, that's a clear conflict of interest. I mean, really a big conflict of interest. And I think the public should know that while they're having these conversations.
Very fair. Very, very good point.
Yeah.
I mean, the conflict of interest thing, and this is a different subject, but it just goes on and on. At the last city council meeting, when they were talking about the DPW election, right, the special election, Commissioner Kaczynski, who's the person in question that they're talking about as to whether or not he's going to stay on or he's going to be involved in an election, voted on that issue. And I'm just like, again, conflict of interest, recuse yourself. I don't know. Sometimes I think these guys are just acting like fucking, excuse me, morons, just morons. But anyway, back to short-term rentals.
Let me just say, well, I won't go off on a tangent. You made a point there, and one thing the mayor said last night kind of touches on what you were talking about here, Robin, about having their stuff together. And I like John Safford. I think he's doing a great job. He's just a decent human being, and he's from Buffalo. Who doesn't love that? But he said something to me last night that was galling when he kept telling these speakers to email their questions and concerns. That can too often that's a black hole, and he didn't realize that. What they should do, Robin, you had a suggestion. Another thing they should do is have one email portal for all questions, all comments, and so forth, and make sure that they're answered. Make sure that it's disseminated to the people it should be disseminated to. Make sure that it's answered, because who do you send the email to? Do you send it to all 5 city councilors and the mayor of all 4 and the mayor? Or do you send it to legal counsel? Who's going to get back? Are you going to get 5 different answers? Listen, they got to get their act together. And again, I go back to what Dylan Moran trying to fast track this, and I get it. He's sort of being attacked, and we saw what Commissioner Gold did with parking. He moved that along quickly. He got what he wanted. He got it in.
But guess what? It failed as a program.
Well, that's my point. That's right. My point. If it's too quick, if it's not done methodically and properly with a lot of research, going back, I want to see a legal analysis from in depth, not verbally written, that this will withstand litigation, and here's why. You can't just say, yeah, it's good legal work here. No, I want to know why. You show me some case law, or if nobody has challenged it, fine, tell me that. But this is not good enough. This is this dysfunctional city continuing to be dysfunctional.
And you guys, let's get at the heart as to why they want comments emailed as opposed to people showing up. They don't want to sit there on a Tuesday night from 6 p.m. until 11 p.m. That's why it takes too much time. But also, when people email things, it does kind of fall into a black hole. And also, if you care about the issue, unless they read those emails in the public comment, no one has any idea that there might be an issue with the public. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I think in some cases, people were being rude and they were firing questions. So the mayor had a good point that maybe that's not the point. They're not going to sit there and answer questions as some angry guy is firing them at them. But the flip side of that is you have to have a system set up where emails actually get looked at, disseminated, and answered. So
we have a couple comments here. Mike says they have a general email that goes to all the council. Never get responses, though.
To my point.
And then Dina said, submit as public comment. There's one link for that. So that's good to know. And then Mike said, well said, Dan. But before we get there, can we at least get a copy of the law that has been proofread? First baby steps. Yeah, I agree. So at one point, Commissioner Moran, I heard like a quick back and forth, and he was saying, we had this document uploaded on the city's website as of Monday afternoon. Like, that should have given people plenty of time to review it before Tuesday night. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Do you think residents are just sitting around refreshing the city website, hoping that maybe a new document will be uploaded? I mean, come on. And then also,
yeah, I mean, what about a legal notice in the paper and a press release and so forth, right?
And like you're saying, like on one hand, he's trying to rush this through. On another hand, he's been talking about this since he's been in office. And we've had like at least two different iterations of this proposal. They were just months and months and months ago. And I don't know. I think this is like a stinker. And I think they have, it's just Jessica just commented. Let's see. Jessica. Okay. Yeah, Jessica. Jessica was refreshing the city website on Monday afternoon. We applaud you, Jessica, for doing that. But I would say that the average resident is not sitting around doing that on their Monday afternoons. At any rate, I don't see this going anywhere good. And I don't think anything's going to happen this summer. I think we established that as well.
Yeah, no, well, I think they moved it, like just kicked it down the road. They're going to have another public comment on it in 2 weeks. They're going to start the meeting at 6. It's going to be they're going to, they're going to, again, I guess, take into the consideration all the comments they got and come up with a new version and do it all again. So we'll see in 2 weeks. I think we're going to go through the same thing. My impression was that this got pulled. Commissioner Moran cited some technical reason why this didn't get voted on, but I think he realized that this wasn't going to get the votes, and I'm glad it wasn't going to get the votes. And until you get rid of these what I see as massive government overreaches of a tattle line and code enforcement's coming into your private residence home, even though I get it, you're going to be renting your home out. This is something Saratoga's done. I don't like this, and I think it represents way too much of a power for the government to come in and control you, your house, and your business.
As I understood it, Commissioner Moran intended to have, correct me if I'm wrong, he intended to have the hearing at the next meeting and then vote on it that evening, which is a horrible idea because the hearing, now some people are just throwing darts at it every which way they can because they hate it or whatever. But some people are bringing very good substantive comments. They're finding errors. They're finding areas that weren't addressed. They're finding things that are in question that are left blank. So you can't, so you're just going to disregard what everyone says that night, not go back to the drawing board? You're going to vote on that? No. And I understand that Dylan Moran feels like his back's against the wall, Commissioner Moran, but that still doesn't justify, Robin, to use your word, sloppy and hasty litigation that's going to get us sued. And we'll talk about getting sued maybe later in this. Mr. Mike AB, who I heard is running the city, keep listening.
Yeah, I was actually wanting to. We're going to be kind of hopping all over the place, but one of the things I wanted to bring up, and you guys tell me what order you want to do this in. Towards the, this meeting was just so long. So we were on the finance agenda, and I think Commissioner Songby had 18 items on her agenda. So number 18, though, was charter change. And I was like, oh, damn. First of all, it's been a long meeting. And now we're going to talk about one of the most controversial issues that, could possibly be brought up. And I feel like part of this council just is hell-bent on attacking some of the most controversial things possible. Charter change being one of them. Do you think we need to address charter change right now? Is this a good moment for this city council to try to put together some kind of charter change proposal? What are your thoughts?
What I will say is there does seem to be a little bit of energy coming up about that issue, even though there's so many other fish to fry. She's not the only one that's been bringing that up. I bet you two have individually heard things as well.
Yeah. What I don't get is you have the city who, for those of us who've been around for a while, have seen this come from a depressed working class, not a prosperous city to a very wealthy city now. It's a beautiful city. There's a lot of growth going on, and we've done this with the charter form of government. So this whole press for charter change, I know it's everybody likes to throw that around, and it seems like it's a hot ticket item right now. But I'm under the understanding like the less a government could do, almost the better. Right. And with 5 commissioners, you have to, the government's really handcuffed into what it can do, because you got to get a majority vote. You don't have one person who has all the power. And so that's why I like this commission form of government, because if there's something to pass, it really's got to be a good idea. And if not, we can't have one person just push through their own ideas, their agendas, or their vision for the city. So I think charter change, I think the charter's gotten us here, and we should keep it.
I used to think that. Like the one upside was that, like, things did have to be good or productive for the city to get past the 5 commissioners, blah, blah, until not this administration, but the last administration started. And within 6 months, Commissioner Montagnino had crippled our police department with his bullshit items that he got passed. And all of a sudden I was like, holy hell, I thought this commission form of government was going to slow things down a little bit. But when you have the wrong people up there, you actually can get some really bad ideas pushed through pretty quickly. That being said, I'm old school about this. The city has voted how many times against charter change? I can think of, at least 4 in the last, 10 or so years that I can think of. And what our charter does have written into it is every 10 years, you have to put together a charter review committee and have them review the charter and how the city government is functioning and come up with recommendations on how it might be streamlined better. And so I think we should just follow what the charter already has written into it and review it that way, as opposed to having a couple of fucking mozzarella sticks out here come up with their own form of government and write it up themselves, which I'm sorry is not a task for just the average resident. That takes like I don't know what kind of professional, but I certainly don't have the ego to think that I could write up a whole new form of government for our city and a transition plan and explain the economics behind it. That takes like real professionals, and the people who have done it in the past have been goddamn idiots. So that's my problem with charter change.
Well, let me add my 2 cents. I'm pretty much on the other side of the issue with you on that. I'm done with this commission form of government. I'm done. I'll vote it time and time again. I was on a committee many years ago, perfectly involved anyway. I don't have any time, but I would be on one again. I am done with this commission form of government. And you're right. The people, regardless of the form of government, if you have bad people or good people, you're going to have good results, but bad people, bad results. But in my view, and talking to people on the inside, and I've not been on the inside, you have. So I'll give you credibility there. But from what I've seen, this is just a constant debacle on top of debacle. And the city's just getting worse. We got to change something. We change the people, and things still roughly stay the same. So let's change the commission. Let's change the form of government.
I'm sorry. So many of these issues that we've had over the last 3.5 years come back to one particular person on the city council, and that's Commissioner Dylan Moran. Let me spell that out for you. Commissioner Dylan Moran. And I'm sorry that I'm cursing on this episode, but he's a goddamn asshole. And he's been an asshole to this podcast. He's been an asshole to us individually. He has called us out on occasion for basically being involved in a big conspiracy with Republicans and conservatives to push certain issues that we're all, in this big cabal, trying to take him down. I mean, he's losing it, but a lot of these issues do come back to him. So speaking of which, I wanted to talk about the way in which Commissioner Moran attacked Mike Brandy last night, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Mike Brandy is the head of the Saratoga Springs Republican Committee. And just for clarity's sake, maybe we could go around the room, just the three of us real quick, and offer up what our political affiliations are. I am a Democrat. Adam, what is your political affiliation?
Yeah, so affiliation, I'm not affiliated with any party. I'm certainly conservative leaning, though, in my beliefs.
And Dan?
I'm a registered Republican that really doesn't like the Republican Party, but I don't know where else to go, so that's where I'm at.
Okay, so you have a Democrat who basically has not been able to get out of bed because of the presidential election. We have a Republican who hates the Republican Party, and we have Adam, who's not registered with any party but leans more conservative. So we don't have any loyal Republicans here who are reporting back to the Republican committee or are working in cahoots with the Republicans, which is what Commissioner Moran keeps saying over and over again. But last night he went on a particularly long rant against Mike Brandy, talking about the fact that Mike Brandy had
real quick. Mike Brandy is the head of the Republican Party.
Yes, sorry, I thought
I was watching a political show.
The city committee, right?
Brandy is, but
yeah, the city committee. And so basically, there had been some press over the last couple of days about the city being called out for violating open meetings laws based on, I think it was, I don't know, I forget exactly when it was, but
this was the issue.
This was the issue. So basically there was a Bills game
in London early in the morning on a Sunday morning.
There was a Bills game on a Sunday morning, and Governor Hochul wanted to adjust the drinking
serving
laws.
times.
Yeah, the serving times to accommodate the Bills game. So basically people get their drink on early on a Sunday morning. And so it only gave the city 1 or 2 days to address our local laws and update them to reflect this change per the governor. And so they had a vote via email versus having an in-person city council meeting. And so Judge Diane Freestone ruled that that was a violation of the open meetings law, which Commissioner Moran took real issue with, because she said, Mike Brandy brought up this issue. He was the one that kind of filed this suit. And it's just another example of how Mike Brandy goes after kind of inconsequential and unimportant issues in Commissioner Moran's view, and really just holds up the city and creates problems for them legally, bogs them down in FOIL requests. Commissioner Moran himself had to read through 2,000 pages of documents because they had just been foiled by Mike Brandy and also John Kaufman, and how basically Mike Brandy has just been a stick in the cog of the wheels of city government working. And I have to say, just my 2 quick thoughts, and hopefully I explained that well enough. It's kind of a little bit nuanced, but 2 quick thoughts are that there were a couple of occasions where we had to vote on something that came up like out of the blue as a city council. And here's what happened. An email will go out. Hey, we need at least 3 of us to show up tomorrow to have a special city council meeting so we can vote on, such and such an issue that's just come up. And 3 of us would be like, okay, like usually I would be like, no problem, I'll be there. I live 3 blocks away. I can walk down and vote on something, no big deal. And we didn't vote on it via email because we knew that was a violation of open meetings law. And it shouldn't be such a big deal for 3 out of 5 of these people to just get together for 10 minutes and vote on something, because that's literally how long it takes. So I didn't appreciate Commissioner Moran saying that this was, superfluous or stupid. I think when you get in the habit of doing these things, it can create some real problems. And so you might as well err on the side of caution and follow the law. Big deal.
Yeah, all right. So I'll be a little yin to your yang. I think some of these things Commissioner Mayor talked about were things that our city government should be commended for, right? To be responsive to the need. You have this unique situation. You have small businesses that want to be able to do business. You have, because of the state bureaucracy, you need the local bureaucracy to get together and get things done, and they did that. So as far as these things go, I'll give Commissioner Moran, again, we always, we have good things to say about him and bad things to say about him. Give him credit for taking the initiative to get these things solved. With that being said, a city council meeting, that felt like politics, right? The attack on Brady. And politics, the city council table is not a time for politics. It's a time for the city's business. And so I understand his frustration with Mike, but that wasn't the time and place, and I don't think that was the time and place for that. Because the other issue he brought up was a FOIL request took too long to get out. Which again, if you listen to Commissioner Safford, this seems like a serious issue within our city hall that's not politically motivated, because you had the Ron Kim administration, now the Safford commission.
But also
offering to get out. Yeah.
I'm sorry. The Ron Kim administration was particularly political about responding to FOIL requests. If there was a FOIL request that pertained to me, it was delivered within 3 to 4 days. And I had that confirmed on multiple occasions.
Kaufman used the term weaponized. Ron Kim weaponized FOIL requests.
They weaponized FOIL requests by expediting the ones that were politically beneficial to them. And I think that still continues today. Dina put up a good point that said reading thousands of pages of FOILs is in the commissioner's job description. She's talking about Commissioner Moran. No, it's not. It's not at all. So I don't know why he brought that up. Mike has responded here. He said, Ron Kim and Moran both admitted it was a violation last year and changed their procedures. There were 6 instances of unlawful text and email votes. Ooh, text votes seems really sloppy. Text and email votes in the months preceding the bill's vote. Kim said it's inconvenient, but we should have met. We should meet. It's important.
What?
There you have it, people.
Thank you. There's a comment on the Saratoga Springs Politics blog, I think on the most current post about this issue. And the person commented, I can't remember who it was, but she wrote a long piece about Dylan Moran not taking ownership of these issues. And she's right. He blows off the law. On an issue earlier this year on job upgrades, he looked at, I believe Commissioner Cole said, who's going to sue me on this? Commissioner Cole was making the point that it was illegal. And he just looked at him and blew it up and said, who's going to sue me? And I couldn't believe I heard that. And I constantly hear things like that. And we're seeing, so as far as methodical, proper methods, legal methods, he just blows it off. But let me shift gears slightly here. I worry, human to human, I worry about Commissioner Moran. He's, he either is attacked or he believes he's being attacked, and he takes it so personally. He's kind of like me. I worry about my health. I'm a heavier guy. I worry about his health. From a human to human, I worry about him because he's taking this all in. And he's a bigger guy. He sometimes just doesn't look good. He looks angry. I worry for his health. But at the same time, as the blog commenter noted, he first needs to do things properly, and this short-term rentals would be a good time to start. And he's done some good work on that. I'm not the one that's always going to attack Dylan Moran. He's done some good work on that, but he's racing to the finish line here to get this done, and that is wrong. Just like with FOIL requests, or open meetings law, and the other things he's being sued on, it just. We need to stop doing the same thing over and over. Don't blame Mike Brandy. He's gonna hold your feet to the fire on the law. Follow the law.
You guys, I couldn't agree more, and I agree with you in that I have sincere concern about his health, and I think that this isn't a good place for him to be on the city council, because he's created so many issues, or self-created so many issues. He does seem to take problems extremely personally. He gets extremely heated, and I too would be worried, and just am worried about his health, mental and physical. That being said, I want to go back to another problem that I think is a real issue that he created, which was not at this city council meeting, but the last city council meeting, where he threw a little tantrum and decided that the special election for the DPW commissioner was going to be called off. He was canceling it. It's over. And Commissioner Kaczynski will be serving out the remainder of Jason Golub's term and won't be up for election until this coming November. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam.
So just to give a little background, the way to set up, the seat is vacant. The Democrats have been pushing for an election because they know it's a heavily Democratic city. They're most likely to win an election. The Republicans want an appointment because it's a 2-2. It's 2 Republicans on the city council, 2 Democrats, so they can hopefully push through somebody who's moderate, not a Democrat. Somehow in the kind of dead of night, they ended up on Hank Kaczynski, who's been a deputy mayor before. He's no stranger to City Hall. And what ended up happening was they set a date for a special election. The Republicans did the proper paperwork to get a candidate there, and the Democrats did not. So you see now this flip of now the Republicans are arguing for this election, and the Democrats are saying, no, we're not going to have, it's not democratic to have an election with only one person on it. And what I thought the biggest loser in this, I thought, was the Republican county chair, who wrote this. It's just this wrote that was just, it was belittling Saratoga, it was belittling our charter. This was it just came off real kind of Trumpian, and Dylan, Commissioner Moran, used that as a say, listen, we're not going to have an election because look, the Republicans don't want one, and fine, us Democrats agree. And the one thing that kind of bothered me, and we'll see how Commissioner Kaczynski does, and I'm sure I'm butchering his, I'm married to a Polish girl, and I'm still butchering his name. It was kind of interesting where he said, and I didn't really like this, but he got up and said, for the good of democracy, he's going to stay in that appointed position and not have an election. And the point was, it's not democracy. There's only one person on the ballot, but it was just, you listen to yourself right now. You're saying to save democracy, we are not going to have an election, and that doesn't ring true to a lot of people. Myself being one of those people.
The other thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I didn't enter today to disagree with you guys on a lot, but he said something. It was the first time I heard him speak publicly, and I thought one thing he said I thought was extremely reasonable, and he said, it is terribly unsettling to me that we might have an election and not have 2 candidates. And actually, at least from my gut, again, before we get to a legal analysis, at least from my gut, I agree with him. However, I don't know. Very few attorneys know election law well, and then you add the added layer of complication of the city charter. So I don't know where this falls. I know there's some logical statements that you guys made, and then Dylan Moran had his counter that it wasn't approved at the county level. Let's face it, none of us know. Maybe Mike Brady knows more than us on this, but no one knows what the legal answer is there. And I agree with Commissioner Kay, to use Tim Pole's term, that I would be unsettled. I do want to see a democratic election. Now, if the court rules, and there will be a court involved here, we know that, if the court rules that they simply missed their deadline and that's the way it is, then I'm fine. But until a court rules, I'm not comfortable here.
I can tell you this with 100% certainty. What the Republican and Democratic representative in the Board of Elections at the county level have to say about our city election has no effect on whether or not we have a city election. It is not within their purview. It has nothing to do with them. The city can run their own elections. Whether or not the county board of elections agrees or disagrees on how we run it is completely inconsequential. So citing that as a reason to not have the city special election is total bullshit. They don't have any say over how the city runs our elections. We have the power to run our elections however we want to run them. So Joe Sciarrotta making these psychotic comments was entertaining because to me, I was like, wow, this guy is a mental case. Cassandra Bergman also came out. The Democratic woman who works in the Board of Elections also came out with comments, but neither comment is relevant. It's not relevant. So they keep using it as an example as why we can't do this. And I know that Commissioner Moran knows that's bullshit. I know he does, but they're just using it anyway to be politically expedient. And in my opinion, this is exactly as it looks. They didn't do the proper paperwork to get the Democratic candidate on the ballot. They realized they screwed up. And so instead, it's like, two kids playing a board game. The one kid's losing. Instead of having to admit that he's going to lose, he flips the table over and says the game's over. That's what Commissioner Moran did. That is what he did.
You may absolutely be correct, but until Mike Brandy or somebody else files in a court, we're stuck with the situation, right?
Well, here's what Mike Brandy just said. The Dems didn't have a candidate. Democracy doesn't require us to wait for a candidate to step up. If the Dems don't have someone to run, it's a one-person election.
Yeah, I think if there was some nefarious or this happened in the dead of night, you would be correct. But listen, these are the rules for an election, right? And if you don't follow the rules and if you don't win by those rules, then you don't win. It's not like, well, we're going to bend these rules because we don't like them or they didn't work for you. The game was set up fairly for everybody to play, and if you don't win playing that fair game, that's on you, not on the game.
It may very well be that simple, but I don't know.
Commissioner Moran was so explicit about the timeline. He was like, you will have 10 days once we declare there's going to be a special election. There'll be 10 days to get your candidate on the ballot. Like, he was so emphatic about that.
I have a feeling we will, like Dan, you said, it will play out in court because there's a lot riding on that.
Well, it has to, because apparently there is no election scheduled right now. The only way to get an election scheduled is with court action to order such, right?
There's
Mike,
just
you want
no
to chime in?
There's no nothing. And the other thing is, Commissioner, and I said this before, Commissioner Kaczynski should never have voted on that issue of whether or not there was going to be a special election. When he's the one that's in question about the election, he should have recused himself. And I mean, I thought he was a smart enough guy to have realized that, but apparently not. So that was, this whole thing was disappointing. Mike just said yes. I'm not really sure what that's in response to, but yes.
I think that he's going to have to file. Somebody's going to have to file suit in court to make something happen here.
Yeah. At any rate.
Or he's saying yes to Dylan Moran's assertion last night that he's despicable.
I'm not going to say he's despicable because
I think I heard that. I don't know. I'm listening on a phone walking the dog, so who knows?
I'm going to withdraw despicable because I don't get that worked up about him. I just think he has a serious ego. I think that he thinks that he knows everything about every subject. I think that when you listen to the pre-agenda meetings and the meetings in general, when questions are posed by other city council members, not to him, but to other city council members, he consistently interjects with the answer and doesn't let the person who's being addressed answer. It's actually like really irritating. I think he needs to sit up. I think he needs to shut up, listen, and stop taking this all so personally.
I agree. No, I thought he asserted somebody or a situation was despicable, but again, I didn't have the best coverage last night.
Oh yeah. No, I think he thinks Mike Brandy is despicable.
Okay, yeah, I think that's what I heard. So, Mike, we love you, Mike. Mike, you're not despicable.
We cleared that up. We also have to talk about another major thing that happened last night, which was the budget. The budget was passed. The proposed budget was passed, but with one notable exception, which was from Commissioner Cole. Did you guys follow that part of the meeting? I know it was like a million hours in.
Yeah, and first, real quick, I mean, what a meeting was yesterday. That the passing of the budget was like the side note afterthought of the meeting. But
I know.
It was like well past 9 o'clock, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but the budget was. I thought, you know what? I thought this was a great representation of why our commission form of government works. The Commissioner Cole, the head of the public safety, was adamant that there was not enough money in there for his police and firemen to be safe. And he brought up there's no money for vehicles and they have to replace vehicles. And that was like his, these vehicles are responding to 911 calls or flying around our streets. Go ahead, Robin.
I'm sorry. I'm itching to say one thing about that.
Yeah.
So Commissioner Cole was really clear on exactly the amount of money that was missing for each line. One of which was, I think, $100,000 for vehicle maintenance and upkeep, which had been brought down to zero. In response to that, Commissioner Songvi noted that the mayor's office is still using a vehicle from 2007. And I just thought to myself, how can someone that intelligent make that kind of comparison when the vehicles for a police and fire department we rely on to get to emergencies? What are we relying on the car in the mayor's department for? How can you make that comparison? It's just dumb.
Yeah.
Sorry, we lost each other. Go ahead.
So anyway, you had this back and forth, and I have to say, Commissioner Songvi made some really great points too, and she brought up the point of, listen, the overtime line in the police department budget is ballooning. It's very big. And we were told last year during budget season that this was a big number because there were trainees. And once these trainees came on board, you wouldn't need
the fire department.
The fire department. You wouldn't need so much in overtime. Commissioner Cole fired back. Listen, in this city, we have 40 events, special events, big events, things like Travers and Belmont each year and SPAC. There's going to be overtime for that. You're going to have officers that are injured who are going to go off active duty. You're going to need overtime for that. He's essentially saying it's unable to predict how much overtime we're going to need. And I thought they both made great points that, listen, there's the pot's only so big. There's only so much money. The police have to figure out ways to police without so much overtime. And Commissioner Cole says, I don't know what the answer is. I think they both did a great job making points. And I think that's why our commission form of government works. Again, I'm the most, back the blue, support our police and our firemen. I think that you could be. But on the other side, too, I'm fiscally responsible saying, all right, if there is a very bloated overtime budget, what the fire or the police department has to do a little soul searching inward as well.
I agree with your point, Adam. I want my commissioner of public safety to fight hard for equipment that's safe and modern for the men and women. And I want my finance commissioner to be tight with the money and kind of a meanie. And they're both doing their role. And hopefully we get some level of compromise, although it did pass. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is at that point.
If there's a zero line item budget for repairing police cars, that seems, if that's really what the takeaway was, that seems to be a glaring problem.
Really
right?
Irresponsible.
Yeah.
So what the thing that was interesting to me was that they said, okay, somebody asked, what's like the sum total of how much money you need to address these issues, Commissioner Cole? And he said somewhere in the line of $400,000 to $500,000. So then they started talking about kind of this pie in the sky idea that once the short-term rental regulations go into effect and it starts generating revenue for the city, that maybe they can reconvene in June and amend the budget, and they will use some of that money to fill some of the holes that Commissioner Cole is talking about. Now, if I'm Commissioner Cole, that doesn't give me a lot of confidence, because so many of these programs that they've predicted that are going to bring in revenue, that revenue either doesn't come in at what they've predicted and it's, down significantly, or it's delayed and delayed and delayed. So I didn't see that as a productive solution for what they were talking about. Also, I think that one of the problems is that this administration and the previous administration has basically let these special events stop covering the police and fire overtime that's required to have the event. And when I was in office, it was it didn't matter who the organization was, who was hosting it. If there was a big special event downtown that required extra police and fire coverage, that event organizer sat down with the Department of Public Safety and were given an estimate of how much it would cost for them to cover the police and fire that were needed for the event. And the organizers of those special events were required to pay those costs. These past two administrations have started excusing these organizations from having to cover that cost and have put it back on the city. And I think that's such an obvious problem here when we're talking about overtime. And I don't think it's the city's responsibility to pay for overtime for police and fire when people are having these events in the city. I do think it should be the event organizers that are paying for it. Why should it be the taxpayers' problem?
I think some of the arguments there, and the reason I'm looking out my window is just as we're talking about overtime, I have the DPW truck and the leaf thing picker upper.
Yeah.
That's a technical term, right? Leaf thing picker upper. They're cleaning the leaves, and they've been going. Hats off to our DPW workers who've been working long hours. They've been desperate to try to get this, and they're probably desperate to try to get before tonight's expected rain, because I don't think you want to handle wet leaves if you can get out quickly and handle dry leaves. But an accolade to them. But to your question there, Robin. I lost my train of thought. I had an answer for you. What did you finish answering?
Special events and paying for overtime for special events.
One of the points made, and it has some validity, is but these special events are what helps make Saratoga Saratoga. In other words, the band on Broadway before the Belmont, right? Who doesn't that, well, theoretically it benefits everybody, but a lot of Broadway shopkeepers said that didn't benefit me one bit. All my regular customers stayed home and none of these people came in. So the theory was that it didn't quite hold true by many people's perspective, but the thinking is all those events are beneficial to Saratoga as a whole. I don't know if it stands up, but that is the answer.
But at the end of the day, when you're coming down to this very specific issue of police and fire overtime, it seems like there's a really obvious cause and effect there. But that being said, we have another comment, which is actually really, I noticed this as well. The agenda item after the budget, cutting safety funding, was her participatory budget items. It was a slap in the face, poor timing. Dina, I couldn't agree more. It was...
Yeah.
I have been a fan of participatory budgeting, but...
As I have.
But when you put it back to back with cuts for police and fire, it just is, just cringe. There's no other way to say it.
I picked up on that last night too, and I know, a lot of my very conservative friends hate that program. They think it's way out of line. I don't. I'm with you guys. I tend to, but just going.
Dave Buchan hates it.
Should we have a compost machine at Pitney Meadows? Why our policemen, your car doesn't work. Well, wait for next year. Maybe there's money to fix it, but hey, we're going to be able to compost as a community. It did not. It was poor timing.
I'm gonna agree with you, but give Commissioner Sungvi a pass. She had a very robust thing last night. It was probably exhausting. Probably doing it at the last minute, watching the sausage made. I'm gonna give her a pass on the timing of it.
Yeah. By the way, I missed this comment. Mike said, I don't want to give too much away on litigation strategy, but there is an election date. So I'm intrigued.
So I think that's the Republican stance. Is an election date was set. There's going to be an election. So
Well, that
But
election.
the county administers it within the city. Is that correct?
No,
We still need the Board of
No.
Elections somehow, right?
No, we do not. The
Not at
commissioner of
all.
accounts, the commissioner of accounts has the authority to do it on their own. You know, they could ask the county for, help if they want to, but no, we can do it on our own.
Okay, was not aware of that. I thought the county always had some role, even if it was solely a citywide election.
We're actually coming up on an hour, you guys, and I know that I can't go over. Do you want to take a quick second? Unless there's other, I know there were so many things to talk about from last night's meeting. Are there any other kind of like critical takeaways that you want to bring up before we get up on our hour here?
no.
There is so much going on. We need another hour that none of us have, and no one wants to sit through another hour. And but there are so many other things going on that we didn't even touch on. The arrest of a couple of former city official and a current city official a couple weeks ago. There's other things going on. So we could keep talking if we had the time and people had the energy to tolerate us.
Yeah, I think the important part is the short-term rental. If you feel strongly about it, that public comment period was very powerful. It's going to be the same thing next Tuesday. Not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday at 6 p.m. Go make your voice heard.
Yes, I agree. I just want to wrap up by saying that this has been one of the most fun things that I've done in the last many, many years. 100 episodes is, well over 100 hours of content that we've produced together. And every Wednesday that we've had these podcasts, I always leave with a smile on my face because it's been just so fun to be on with the two of you and talk about the things that are going on in the city. It's always a highlight of my week. And so I just want to cheers to both of you for doing this with me. And the way it came together was so organic and it's just been awesome. So I want to say just a cheers with my Sprite to our 100 episodes and to my amazing co-hosts, Adam and Dan. You guys, the three of us, I just think this dynamic is so awesome and I love doing it with you. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who has watched, the thousands of people who have watched. Thank you.
Well stated, Robin. So well stated. And I know we don't have the videos, but John Kaufman sent us a nice video. John, I'm sorry we can't get it on. And did anyone else send us a quick little snippet video?
We'll revisit in our next episode.
Okay.
We had some people send us some videos with congratulations on the 100th episode. But
yeah, I just want to say for everybody, it's great going out there. I love people coming up and interacting with me on the street saying, hey, listen, I agree with this or I disagree with this. Or this is, what do you think about this? It's been a pleasure to be able to have an excuse to follow city politics for so closely. So anyway, cheers to us, guys.
Yeah, cheers to us. And we will see you soon, folks. Cheers to us. Happy Wednesday, you guys.
And cheers to everybody that watches and give us such enthusiasm and feedback and comments. Cheers to all of you as well.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, guys.
Charming.